You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.
Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday morning, and it's not bright. It's just early. My wife has reminded me I got Rob Lapham calling all the way from Port St. Joe. And Rob, tell me what's going on in the libertarian world down in your part of the country.
Good morning, James.
Good morning, sir.
I think the most interesting thing, at least in the last 24 hours, happens to be an endorsement that came in from a veterans organization, and don't see too many endorsements.
Wow.
Being the Libertarian Party, being the smaller of nowhere near as large as the two old parties.
Right.
But they came out with a really very nice endorsement yesterday, and I put it up on my Rob for Congress Facebook page.
Very good.
And this is a veterans organization.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, one of their primary concerns is the Veterans Administration itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not their only concern, but
Right.
it's certainly one of their various focuses. And I communicated with them a couple of months ago with their responding to their survey.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the thoughts and commitments that I would make upon being elected to Congress
Mm-hmm.
is to push for a privatization of the VA along the lines of distance from a VA hospital.
Yeah.
We have today, it's been going on for almost 2 years now, the rule that if you are a covered veteran who lives 40 miles or more away from a VA hospital,
Mhm.
you have the option to use your private doctor, private hospital, and you don't have to go into the VA. And mechanically, I would just start moving the goalposts.
Yep.
Next year would be 35 miles from the VA hospital, then 30, and basically reduce the distance so that at each stage, veterans are able to choose. You let the market choose, and veterans choose what is best for them. What has to be managed in that scenario is the entrenched bureaucracy at the VA,
Mhm.
where as their patient loads drop, those folks are not going to want to give up their jobs, and that's going to be a challenge.
That is going to be a
But,
challenge. That is something I've noticed, the sanctity between employee, employer, the long-term benefits of retirement, things like that. Once you get into a governmental agency, governmental business, it's really hard to release anybody. And everybody wants to be, they want to have that long-term gold-plated retirement. That, I mean, it's only human nature to want these things, but that's one of the things that a lot of people in government are going to have to start looking at long-term hiring. And we may end up hiring a lot of part-time people instead. That way you won't have the benefits to go with long-term employment, and that's what's going to happen on the VA. And as you said, as the load decreases, the number of people going to the VA, those people are going to be forced out due to attrition as they get in there. And I think that's the best way to do it. Just have it where veterans are seeing their local doctor without having to travel such long distances, and that way they get better care. And isn't that what you're advocating at the same time? And that would cut down a lot of the cost of the VA because you don't have a separate brick and mortar building or institution?
Absolutely. I absolutely support that approach. I'm open to other approaches, but the question is what works and what has not worked
Mm-hmm.
in the recent decades is every time there's a VA problem,
Mm-hmm.
it seems that Congress votes more money to pour into the VA. And I will bet that the average cost of servicing the average VA patient at the VA hospital
Mm-hmm.
is frankly way more than what it would be in the private sector. We all know how expensive medical care is.
Oh, Lord, yes.
But in the case of the government, they have all of this regulatory burden, plus the fact that they have a certain percentage of employees who are frankly just dead weight, and people
yes.
who are not only not contributing, but messing it up. I'm recalling an administrator at the VA in Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Last month, they fired her. 2 weeks later, they reinstated her. And this is the organized labor component. So you have dead weight sitting around that we really, over a period, must get rid of those people.
And that's whether it's in the VA, whether it's in Congress or the Veterans Administration. We do seem like once you get into a government job, or it's the closest thing to a eternal life. As far as opening a program up, whether it's to help veterans or whatever, it seems like it keeps going on and on and on. It gets bigger and bigger, and it becomes less and less efficient. That's what, like I think you talked about once before, the war on poverty was started in 1964 to eliminate poverty, and it was a certain percentage of the American population that was in poverty. Well, if I'm not mistaken, the war on poverty has been a dismal failure because we still have the same percentage or higher than we had in 64. Did you say that to me once upon a time?
I did, and the facts behind it are articulated in a report that the General Accountability Office put out in 2014, just 2 years back. And what they said was in 1964, the federally determined poverty rate was 14.0%. And in 2014, 50 years later, the federally determined poverty rate was 14.3%. So it inched up a bit.
It inched up
during
0.3.
those 50 years, James, the federal government spent $22 trillion of our tax dollars to win the war on poverty. Well, obviously, we lost.
Obviously.
And those $22 trillion are gone.
Obviously. So the war on poverty increased poverty. If you really want to get down to it, I mean, 14 to 14.3. So if you're looking at statistics, it actually increased. As the population increased, it stayed current with it. It didn't seem to change anything. Matter of fact, what it did do is make a dependent society, a lot of people have said, because now we've got people that know how to work the system, and they have several children. For every child they get extra money. And, of course, the baby's daddy's not hanging around there anymore. And so there's a lot of corruption out there, and this is not the way the system is supposed to work. It's supposed to be able to take, people that fall through the cracks. And that's one of the things that we've got the war on poverty, and that failed. The war on drugs, that has miserably failed. Only thing it's done is destroy families, destroy the productivity of Americans out there. Maybe they need to start a war on farmers markets. You ever thought about that? I mean, we need to, if they start a war on farmers markets, there'll be more of them, and we can have better quality food out there. I know that sounds silly, but think about it. Every time they declare a war on something, it increases it. War on terrorism, we got more terrorism. A war on drugs, got more drugs. War on poverty, got more poverty. So I think every time the government gets involved with something, it doesn't seem to work the way they think it's supposed to work. And that centralized planning just doesn't seem to work. I mean, even Stalin was at least cautious enough to only have a 5-year program, where our centralized government wants 20, 30, 100-year programs. It's crazy. It's insane.
Yep, we have to hope that the American people, the voter, will wake up at some point and say, hey, and I'm fond of saying anybody that you ever elected to Congress in your entire voting lifetime, anybody you ever sent to Washington was either a Republican or a Democrat. And both of those parties always voted the money that their president asked for.
True.
And no exceptions to that. These situations where you have government shutdown, they happen every few years, but it only lasts for a few days.
Right.
All the federal employees get all their back pay. They lose nothing.
Right.
And we end up voting more money, and Congress continues to spend more money than they take in. And so that spreads across all these programs that are funded by phony money, and it will lead to substantial inflation in the long run. Actually, in the short run, I guess interest rates are going to go up next month. The Federal Reserve is hinting right now. So we're in for a tough future.
Well, and that's what I keep telling people. They keep saying, well, times are getting better, and I kind of look at them and go, do you ever look at economic trends? And they go, no. I said, hey, do you know anything about history? And they go, yeah, a little bit. And I said, well, do you know how we have recessions and depressions and things like that? And they go, yeah. We seem to have that. And I said, did you know that they're cyclical and you can just about track them on a chart, within 6 months to a year of each other? And they looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, just go back and look at the booms and busts in America. Just go look at it. Good times and bad times. You'll see that they're cyclical. They have certain patterns they follow, and we're repeating the same pattern we did in 2007, 2008, Rob, and we're fixing to have another boo-boo happen, and I don't think anyone's aware of it, or awake of it, I should say. Doesn't seem to be.
I think that most people who think that the economy is getting better on a national level has been watching too much Obama propaganda, to be honest with you.
They've been drinking too much Kool-Aid out there. I don't know what, the Jim Jones Kool-Aid. That's about the way I'm looking at it. It seems like there's suicide kits we're doing out here. We keep doing this to our money out there. We keep deflating our money by printing more money, and no one seems to be talking about it. I'm watching the price of metals go up, such as gold and silver, and that's usually an indication that something's right around the bend fixing to happen. We're seeing this is the exact same scenario that happened in 2005, 6, and 7, right before the big boom. Everybody thinks everything's fine, and if we don't get our act together, we're going to make it. What's fixing to happen is going to make 2008, 2009 look like a walk in the park. It really is. In my humble opinion, I mean, I'm not that smart. I'm not an economist. An economist is someone that gets paid six-figure salaries a year to be wrong 50% of the time. I'm not an economist.
James, I'm on exactly the same page as you are, and we have to hope that the American public, the voting public in particular, begins to wake up and be very careful who they vote for, particularly at the national level, but I don't want to take away other levels of government. Right now, in Bay County, you spend money that I recall you saying in times past on incentive grants or payments that were made to entice companies into Bay County, and they spend it and then they leave.
Yeah, we got an 87% failure record with Economic Development Alliance. Since 2000, they've lured in 16 companies with enticements. Out of the 16 companies, 3 remained. So that's an 87% failure rate. If I had that kind of failure rate on fixing cars, I wouldn't be in business very long. I really
terrible
wouldn't.
Track record. I think they need to have some new commissioners on service.
What they need to do, this. I told him, I said, when you give money to something in public-private partnerships, that is corporate welfare. That's what you're doing. They've got the money up there. What they're doing, they're trying to suck money out of you to come down here, where they don't have to spend their money, and they don't have any skin in the game, so to speak. And unless a company's got skin in the game, they should get nothing. I think we got a great place to live. We got low taxes here in Florida. We don't have a state income tax. We got great weather compared to up north. And if we can just figure out how to get our school districts where people can actually have an education and learn how to work, and we can get this mentality down here where we can actually have factories instead of trying to keep maintaining a service industry where we're making beds and cooking flapjacks. We've got to change our mentality and our way of thinking. We really do. And I know I sound like I'm preaching to the choir here, but but I just, that's the way I feel about these things. But Rob, we only got about 15, 20 seconds left. What would you like to tell people out there?
Oh, I would say, and by the time this airs, it may be irrelevant, but folks, if you'd like the straight skinny on what's going on at the federal level and what can be done to stop it, and what are all my pledges in order to straighten up this mess, please go to www.robforcongress.org, and it's all laid out there. And my phone number's there, so give me a call if you have a question.
Well, I'll be putting this on YouTube so we can spread this around, okay? So that way we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait till it shows on Fox 28. We can just spread this around, let people hear the word. All right, Rob, you be good. All right, you be good. We'll talk to you next weekend. This is James Morris. Got Brian Armstead calling all the way from Maryland, I believe. We'll be right back.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.